Okay, live stream. We'll see how this goes. If anyone happens to watch this in replay, just reading until the first. Hello, Orbis. Welcome. The first person. It turns out I haven't had to wait very long. I just had a book. I thought maybe I'd have to wait, but welcome. Welcome to the live stream. How are you? So, Orbis, I don't know if this is your first live stream, but usually I try to get a few people involved to kind of try to get a flow of conversation going. Is this your first live stream? Are you a new subscriber or have you been on my channel for a while? It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so I thought it was overdue. Oh, I should say I've got a 20-second mode on, so yeah, it's just so it doesn't get too cluttered. I've been a subscriber for a long time. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm just asking because I don't think I've seen your name on a live stream before. So welcome. Where are you from, Orbis, if you don't mind me asking? I just find it interesting to find out where people are coming from. If everyone's, a lot of people are UK based, but not everyone is. Oh, Northern Ireland. You haven't changed your name, have you? Because I had a few subscribers from Ulster, and you haven't changed your username, have you? You from Belfast or somewhere else? I should probably know I was born in Belfast, but I've grown up in northeast England. Okay, yeah, I thought that was it. Well, I mean, I'm happy to chat, but it's always better with get a few people into the conversation to sort of get a bit of a flow going. Anyway, while we're waiting, have you had a busy Easter, or has it been quiet? For me, it's been quiet because of my sister's had a rough time recently. Her little dog died, so my parents have been visiting her in Scotland. So it's been quiet here. I've just been trying to do some paperwork, fill things in. I didn't go to church today, although I am somewhat spiritual. Just because I was up all night. I was actually watching WrestleMania last night. I don't know if you're into wrestling, but I'm sufficiently into it to watch WrestleMania on Netflix. Put it that way. Kind of brings back nostalgia from not childhood, but yeah, I was into the Attitude Era in the late '90s, early 2000s. Orbis Rex is quite a cool username. What made you come up with that one? I actually see two viewers, so if someone else is there, please feel free to leave a comment. I mean, the little emoji I'm getting is two viewers. I don't know if that's including me or what. Maybe I should speed this up a bit to every 10 seconds. I don't know. Let me just see how I do this. Slow mode is on. Yeah, it's fixed now. I thought 20 seconds would be good, but maybe that's a bit slow. Sometimes, though, if a lot of people come into the live stream, it can get a bit crowded, and then I miss someone's comments. That's why I put it on. Apparently, it was when Boris Johnson wanted to be. It's Latin for world king. I heard it on the radio and thought it sounded good. Certainly is. I guess it could also be Oris Rex / Jack Dawson, that famous line in Titanic, I'm the king of the world. Orbis Rex. Of course, Rex is the old Latin term for king. Charles Rex being the formal way I think the king signs documents. So Orbis, I suppose Orbis, orbiting, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it does sound cool. Oh yeah, Boris. I think that was one of his childhood ambitions. Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, there was a charity with that name, as I recall, Charity for Sight, because I remember getting the paperwork for the door some years ago, sort of helping the blind in developing countries, and the charity was called Orbis. Orbis World Vision, I think was the full title. Hi, Alex. Welcome. How are you? I hope I get quite a few people in this live stream because it has been a while since I've done it, and I thought it was long overdue. You see, there's always topics that I want to cover in videos, but for various reasons, I don't get around to them. I've just uploaded one actually just now on Chinese volunteers caught in Ukraine and the horrendous experience they go through in the Russian forces. Doing all right in California. So let's see, it's 10:17 p.m. UK. I guess you're only just after lunchtime there. Um, would that be about right? Or I guess early afternoon. Is that about right? Where are you, Alex? Are you in LA, Sacramento, San Francisco? Whereabouts are you? I was watching, like I said to Orbis, I was watching WrestleMania last night, which was from Las Vegas, so sort of Pacific Standard Time. And I don't know if the live stream of that has begun yet on Netflix, but I will be watching it. Alex, if you don't know, there's a 20-second delay. I just put that in case the live stream got crowded, just so that comments aren't overlapping one another. But apparently, it's like that. That's more relevant when it gets busy. If there's anything you guys want to talk about specifically, feel free to bring it up. Because that's usually, I mean, the thing with live streams, it's obviously my channel, I'm the one talking, but I always welcome participation. Whereas the videos, I guess that's the difference with the videos. I talk about subjects that are on my mind. Live streams are a little bit more fluid, a little bit more flexible. I want to give subscribers a chance to talk about anything they want, really. It's just a way to engage with subscribers. So I appreciate you guys coming in. I mean, we take it for granted now in 2025, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the idea of talking to someone in California would be a novelty. Now it's a given. Silicon Valley, Bay, right in Mountain View. So that's around San Jose, if I got that right. So between San Jose and Sacramento, is that right? Or thereabouts? I've not been to California actually. I was in the United States back in '99, but that was up in the Northeast, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia. Um, my girlfriend's family, well, her sister and her nephews live in California, so I do envisage it being in the future. I hope so. Hope to go there someday. I know California State from Colombo best. I never watched Colombo, I must admit. Mountain View City. I must admit, Alex, I'm not familiar with that. Um, but I know Silicon Valley is one of the richest parts of a very wealthy state. Columbo, I never watched that series. That was I forget the actor in it, but it was a kind of police drama, wasn't it? I think it must be the 80s now, that show. But I know it was quite successful at the time. Peter Falk, that's him. Yeah. Yeah, I know it was quite successful. I never watched it, but I'm familiar with it. So what's it like in Mountain View right now, Alex? Is it very hot today? Is it dry? I mean, is it kind of? I guess my question is it the image that outsiders would have of California, or is it a bit cooler because it's not, it's not Death Valley, it's further north. 1968 to 2003. Goodness, I didn't think it was that long. So was there different sort of incarnations of it, or I kind of had it in my mind it was sort of late 70s, early 80s. I didn't think it lasted as long as 35 years. Was that in syndication, or was that? I mean, was it always with Peter Falk? or was someone replaced him in the role? I didn't realize it was as late as 2003. Very warm and sunny. Actually, weather here has been okay recently by UK standards. It's been dry and relatively sunny for the most part. My girlfriend came from the Philippines recently, and she did find it a bit cold at first, but I promised her that the weather would get better, which it did. It did. I've just been focusing on. It's been quiet, so I've been going through paperwork. I keep a lot of paperwork in. Sugar. So, sorry, guys. It's an accident. I hope I wasn't knocked out the stream. Shit. Sorry. Yeah, I was just showing this. I keep a lot of paperwork, and these are very useful. Sort of these plastic pad things. I keep paperwork, various documents, and so on in there. Sort of some receipts that I find interesting. It could be quite sentimental too. What part of the UK do you live in? I'm in northeast England. So if you're familiar with British geography, quite close to the border with Scotland, probably about an hour and a half from the Scottish border, northeast England. So we're sort of lying on the North Sea. It can be quite cold here. It's not the best weather in the world, but it's okay. The other side of that is in winter we don't get very thick snow because we're on the coastline. So just common sense. He's back. It was always with Peter Falk, though two other actors played the character before him. Though they're not that well known. The series proper ran from 1971 to 78, and then the revival from I see. So it wasn't straight through. It was like a revival. I'm with you. So who was in the revival? Well, you mentioned it was always Peter Falk. So was he also in the revival? Happy Easter, everyone. You too. Just common sense. Happy Easter to all who celebrate it. I've somewhat got back in touch with my Christian faith. I wouldn't say I'm particularly pious, but I am genuinely interested in the history of the Bible. I mean, there's something called, I don't want to give a sermon here, but there's something called the Markan priority, which is that the Gospel of Mark influence the other synoptic Gospels, Matthew and Luke, whereas John was written sometime afterwards. But even if you're not religious, actually, the history of that period can be very interesting. By the way, I left Reform UK. Well, I would never presume to tell someone else how to vote, but I welcome that. I don't entirely trust Reform UK, but why did you leave? Just common sense, just out of interest. He was in the revival too. I guess he was older at that time. God bless me. I'm born again. Was there some life experience that put you in that situation? Just common sense, or was it just something like from talking to others, or was there some sort of experience? If you don't mind me asking, I'm an Ulster Unionist. Yeah, I mean, with me, I'm a Protestant and I'm British, so I'd be a Unionist as well, but not in the sectarian sense. I mean, my girlfriend's a Filipina Catholic, um, and I grew up outside the Troubles. I wasn't really exposed to the really sectarian stuff. But my mum's side of the family, rural Antrim, definitely Protestant country. This is good. We've got a few people here. That's hopefully some others will join in. Like I say, there's a 20-second delay, so if you're trying to post, please excuse that. It's just I put it on so that sometimes I've had live streams where comments have been flooding through and it's been a bit of overlap. So just to make that a little bit more manageable, I guess. Yeah, what I mean, Orbis, is that I'm somewhat detached from Northern Ireland politics. Um, I mean, it's important, but I've been in England for so long that it's not on my radar as much as it would be were I still in Northern Ireland. Nasty people in Reform trying to tell me not interview Ben Habib, then people telling me what I should and shouldn't. So I mean, my impression with Reform, leaving aside I don't trust your stance on Russia. That's the first thing to say. But I think that they're having a bit of a civil war at the moment. The other issue I have with Reform, if I was a Reform voter or if I was a Reform member, I'd be suspicious of the fact that it's a one-man party. I mean, it's basically the Nigel Farage party, and if he left Reform, no doubt he'll go and start another party. You know, what is Reform? It seems to just, I think there is a place for it. There's a place for that sort of right wing element of, pushing back against some of the nonsense that we're seeing. Um, I'll give Reform credit; they have been outspoken on things like police overreach, areas where the Liberal Democrats should be more outspoken. But I've never trusted Reform on some international areas. I don't like Farage's sycophantic attitude to Trump, and I don't trust them on Russia. Domestically, it depends on the issue, but I wouldn't entirely trust Reform. And I also think that their success is exaggerated. I think they're doing well, but Labour made a point, if they can't handle the fact, what is it, 5 or 6 MPs, if they're infighting to that point, how can they run the country? I know what you mean. I'm pretty moderate. The Ulster Unionist Party is the oldest party in Ireland. Yeah, yeah, the old UUP as opposed to the UP. So, like I say, I'm a little bit detached from Northern Ireland politics. I don't trust them with the NHS. Also agree, Nigel. Care about Nigel. Yeah, to me, it's just. I mean, I'll give Farage this. I think he's not stupid. I think he's a skilled political operator, but he just keeps switching party to party. He forms a party, falls out with it, then goes and forms another party. So I don't think he's stupid, but I think he's essentially a political protester in the same vein as the Greens in that sense, although Reform's bigger than the Greens. But I just, I think Reform is very good at criticising, not so good at proposing what they would do instead. And that's that's one area I'm skeptical about with Reform. Whether there'll be a Reform Tory pact, I don't know. I think there's too much bad blood there, particularly between Kimmy Badenoch and Nigel Farage, so I don't really see that happening. But I think Farage is looking a bit foolish now with what Donald Trump's coming out with. It doesn't look that patriotic to be so sycophantic to Trump when he's got 10% tariffs on this country, which granted is less than other countries, but I think Trump's stance on Russia absolutely cannot be trusted. Anyway, you try to raise something in the party, you will be told to shut up. Well, that's not healthy in any party. I mean, I think one reason Labour and the Conservatives have got as big as they have is because they are broad churches. And whilst there's certainly dogma in both Labour and the Tories, you'll still find a lot of different opinions. So, for example, what Labour's doing to disabled claimants right now, very controversial, but there is a lot of backbench Labour MPs who are speaking up on that. Whereas with Reform, as you say, there's a dogmatic side to it. I don't think there's a plurality of thought that you get in bigger parties. So your experience certainly isn't a good. Did you say you tried to interview Mr. Habib? Is that right? You actually are you a freelance journalist, or what was the background there? I do hope some people who leave comments on my channel come to this live stream, because I always feel bad if I don't get back to comments. But life gets busy. I try to when I can, but I can't get back to every comment. So I hope some people who left comments do come into this live stream. Like I said, it's always an opportunity for people to raise any subject they want, even if they want to criticize me. Of course I'll defend myself, but I believe in free speech, so I want to give people a platform to do that. If they disagree with the point I've taken, I can maybe clarify it, or whatever the situation may be, just talk about a particular subject. So like I said, guys, I'm not necessarily bringing anything up. I'm just putting it out there. If you want to raise anything, you want to ask anything, you want to say, let's talk about this, I'm totally open to that. I will be making a video just in case you're wondering regarding this ruling on the trans issue. The only reason I haven't done so already is because I haven't read up on it. I've been distracted by other things, but I will definitely be talking about that one because I think it's pretty important. I'm now going solo and just coming back to YouTube. I like the SDP, but I want to be my own person from now on. Well, I mean that's always a good thing. Sometimes it's good to get away from partisan politics because even if you believe in a party, even if you find yourself aligned with a lot of their positions, my experience is you kind of do have to nail your colours to the mast. To use an expression associated with one Jack Crawford, he was a sailor who actually was a hero of the Battle of Camperdown. He was a local sailor in Sunderland. We've got a statue to him. But anyway, nailing your colours to the mast, it's one thing with party politics can be a challenge. Having to kind of stand up for the party when you may be uncomfortable with some aspects. I mean, I always have some sympathy for canvassers during a general election or a local election who have to go around doors and then they get angry members of the public saying, "Why is your leader done this?" Or and they kind of have to defend the leader or the party when they may themselves feel uncomfortable about it. But and then the problem is if they say to the person, "Well, actually, I disagree with that position," then the person will turn around and say, "Well, why are you in that party?" So it can be difficult, I think, to have party affiliation in that sense. I haven't been aligned with any party in 15 years. I left the Liberal Democrats in 2010. Um, I'm political, so I won't rule out joining a party in the future, but definitely having looking from the outside can be healthy. Um, the other thing that unfortunately though, if you're ambitious, if you want to get into politics, it's very, very difficult to do it as an independent. Very occasionally independents can win a seat, but it's hard. So really, if you're ambitious, if you want to be a legislator, if you want to improve society, the only way to really do it is to be in a political party and get elected. So it is a challenge. I think, for political people like us, we see things in the inner workings of parties that the general public don't necessarily see. What I mean by that is they don't understand the compromise that's involved. They don't understand, you know, having to be loyal to a party. They don't understand what it takes to win an election. I mean, often people complain politicians make promises they don't deliver, but in a way, I think the media pressurizes candidates into this because if they don't make grand sort of plans, or I don't think they should make promises, but if they don't make grand plans and people say, oh, they're not inspiring. So I think the general public underestimate how hard politics is, basically. Let's see. Wasn't you a Lib Dem member many years ago? If so, why did you join? Yeah, I guess it's just a time lapse here. Like I've just said, I was in the Liberal Democrats for 5 years, about 5 years from 2005 to 2010. Basically, the background of that: 2005, coming up to the general election that year, I was at university, and although I was studying journalism, I started getting more political. I followed the American election of that year closely, Bush versus Kerry. I was strongly opposed to the Iraq War. I very briefly dabbled in some quite hard left groups, although I was never hard left myself. And then I kind of came across the Lib Dems. They were quite vocally opposed to the Iraq War. So initially, that's why I joined. I saw them as a mainstream party, i.e., responsible, that were opposing the Iraq War. Why did I leave? It was a combination of reasons. My own views on crime and justice are pretty hardline, pretty conservative, and I felt like a hypocrite by continuing to be in a party who, frankly, take a liberal left attitude to crime. The Lib Dems aren't as soft as, say, the Greens would be or the SNP, but definitely they wouldn't align to my way of thinking on crime. So I felt like a hypocrite by being in a party to which I had one very strong position, that wasn't aligned that way. The other thing was Nick Clegg joining the Tories, because at the time I actually argued for it for a while. I thought, well, this is the closest they're going to get to government. This is the only way we make legislation. Nick Clegg got a lot of heat for that, but what what angered me was when he started using the same language as the Tories on things like welfare and the unemployed. It did anger me because that would be a more left wing side of me. So, in a way, both the left wing and right wing sides of me took issue with the Lib Dems. The right wing side because I didn't like their stance on crime and justice, and the left wing side because I didn't like the way Nick Clegg was enabling Tory cuts. So that's basically it. So I just felt like a hypocrite by continuing to be in the party. But I will say that it was a formative experience, and I will say I don't regret the experience, and I still think there's some very capable Liberal Democrats in Parliament. Um, Ed Davey, I didn't like his stance on the trans issue, but recently I've got more respect for him. I like the fact he's spoken out against Trump. Um, I think he's a decent leader. I don't like some of his pandering to woke orthodoxy the way Starmer was, but at least Ed Davey isn't, pandering to Trump. I want to know more about Ed Davey. I want to know what is his stance on free speech because I think the Liberal Democrats should be in the forefront of that debate, and they're not as much as they should be. I mean, for example, when that couple was arrested in Hertfordshire, the Liberal Democrats should be absolutely screaming from the rooftops, this is wrong. They're not. So if I was to join them again or join any party again, it would be issues like that that I would want to know about. I also stood as a councillor twice unsuccessfully, but the second time in 2010, I tripled my own results. So obviously I didn't win, but the first time I got 219 votes, the second time 773 votes in my local ward. So obviously I didn't win. This is a strong Labour area, but it was an experience. I'll be honest, when I first campaigned, I was so nervous speaking in front of people, I forgot to tell them which party I was representing. I also remember an unpleasant experience where I was canvassing, and it was a reasonable time of the day. I think it was 2 p.m. or something. And a woman really berated me. She said she'd done a night shift and her dog was barking. All I could do was apologize. I was sort of thinking to myself, well, come on, it's the middle of the day. It's not like I'm disturbing you in the evening. And the public, on one hand, they'll complain politicians never listen, but then they'll also complain about canvassing. One thing I do like about the Lib Dems is, I mean, during the pandemic, they phoned up to check how I was. They were just doing that generally. Lib Dems do campaign out of election times. That's the positive side. If there's a negative side, the Lib Dems can be quite negative campaigners. They do tend to trash other parties a little bit too much. And I actually gave them that as feedback. I said, look, I agree with a lot of your positions, but this is negative campaigning. You need to do a bit more than just. So, anyway, that's my background. But just to be clear, I'm not aligned with any political party right now. I've mulled on the idea of standing as an independent, but like I say, it's a very, very challenging thing. Another thing I'm skeptical of in the political process is the whole thing of the financial side of it. That is to say, getting deposits. I don't think that our democratic process should be restricted on whether someone can afford a deposit or not. I mean, it's £100. I understand. I don't really think there should be a financial aspect to that. I basically take the view anyone, so long as they're, law abiding, so long as they're playing by the rules, should be allowed to stand for parliament in our democratic process. And if they're useless, they're not going to be elected. But I do basically support that. Making our democratic process a bit more. I mean, the other thing that I'm skeptical of is the way some big parties select candidates. I think there's question marks on that, and I'm down to one viewer. I hope some of you guys haven't left. Just common sense. I don't know if you're the only one now. I don't think I heard you talk about guns, as it's been 26 years since Columbine today. What's your view on the topic of guns? Actually, I have been very vocal on this issue in the past. The only reason I haven't mentioned it recently is actually unusually for America, it has been a little while since there's been a major mass shooting in the US. Basically, I think that America's gun culture is insane. I've been very vocal on this. My brother and his family were in the US for a while and they narrowly avoided a mass shooting. As it turned out, the guy was just threatening he wasn't going to carry it out, but was in a shopping mall. Um, this is an area where British and American culture is quite different. Americans, at least pro gun Americans, really associate with freedom. They really think this right to bear arms is the foremost mark of freedom. In Britain, after Dunblane, we saw it for what it was. We saw it as guns are dangerous weapons. They shouldn't be in the wrong hands. I personally don't think I need a gun to be free. But I just think the American gun situation is insane. I mean, I could talk about this a lot, but it really angers me when there's a massacre and the attitude of Republicans is thoughts and prayers, but we better not offend the NRA. It's pathetic. Um, I just don't understand that mentality of saying, well, it's mental health, it's delinquent youth, it's depression, and they'll blame everything except guns themselves. But those issues can be found in most countries. You know, I just think that's ridiculous. You can find disillusioned youth in the UK, in Japan, and Australia. You can find people who are disgruntled with their workplace, but you don't get the rate of mass shootings. In America, I do think, like what you've mentioned, with all due respect to your ex, this attitude to guns, it's a little bit cult like. I find it a little bit creepy, in all honesty. Now, I'm not 100% against guns. If you live in a, say, rural Montana, bear country, something like that, yeah, that it makes sense to have guns to protect your family. Um, I'm not even against like a responsible gun owner having a handgun in a high crime neighborhood. But what is insane is some states have like open carry stuff, whereby you can legally carry a loaded firearm into a movie theater. Yet the same state will send someone to prison for having a small quantity of marijuana. It's insane, utterly insane. So it may be this issue, actually, apart from the re-election of Trump, that makes me grateful to not live in the United States. It's one thing I don't think I could stomach about living in America. There's many things I like about America, but that's something that's honestly alien to me. This love of guns. It's just, like I said, I'm not 100% against them, but it's the lunacy of there being such a blatant problem and not recognizing that problem. Should a gun that holds 50 rounds. Yeah, I mean, why does anyone need that? It's insane. It's insane. I mean, even if someone does it as a kind of hobby because they like the feel of shooting targets and stuff, um, to not recognize that there's a problem in society, it's just the thing about Columbine. Of course, it's been surpassed many times, but I think that it kind of opened up the situation. You know, there's been worse mass shootings in Columbine, but it was kind of a reminder of what was happening. In fact, the fact that Columbine was big news in 1999, if that happened today, it would be news for a couple of days, and it's just another mass shooting. That's tragic. I remember in 2021, that year saw four major massacres in the United States. In fact, at one point, there was one in Dayton, and I think literally within the same 24 hours, there was one in, I believe it was Boulder, Colorado. Um, I lose track of all the massacres, but I've had some heated debates with people on this. I just think it's madness. Um, the American attitude to guns. But then again, there is a caveat to that. There are many, many Americans who do recognize the problem. So I think it's wrong for outsiders to think all Americans are gun crazy. There are Americans who want better gun control because they've seen what happens. They've seen their children killed. What I find particularly contemptible is the likes of Alex Jones coming and say, survivors of a mass shooting are just crisis actors. Insanity. Um, yeah, anyway, that's, as you can see, I have strong views on this subject. But it is good that it isn't an issue in Britain. I mean, we actually have one of the lowest homicide rates in the world. We do have a problem in this country with knives, unfortunately. But if we had the same availability of guns in Britain, you can imagine some of the low lives in this country getting their hands on that. It's another thing I'll say. Often it's this pathetic argument. Um, oh well, criminals will get them anyway, but they would. People are okay with legislation on car safety, vehicle safety. So I don't know the mentality with this idea of the surrendering mentality. Oh well, criminals will get guns anyway. Well, that doesn't mean society shouldn't do something about it. In Britain, the reason we don't have mass shootings all the time is because it is very difficult to get a gun in this country. Even most criminals, they can get knives, and yeah, some have guns, but we don't have mass shootings for a reason so frequently. Alistair, welcome. Do you think the Muslim independents will form into a united party for the next election? That's interesting. I do think we're seeing some signs of sectarianism in this country. Um, Without question, there's Islamist presence on the streets of Britain. And I think the police have failed to reassure the public because they failed to be consistent in policing. That attack recently by the Manchester Arena bomber happened at HMP Franklin, which is about 10 miles from here. So we're seeing an Islamist influence in prisons. It's important to recognise most British Muslims are not hardcore Islamists, but we do have a sizable minority that are. Um, I mentioned earlier that anyone should be able to get involved in the democratic process, and basically, I do believe that. But I believe if you have extremists such as Islamists who want to form political parties, they need to be absolutely robustly opposed. And where they're breaking laws, the police need to be seen to be acting. I think they failed so far, but what I will say is I don't think they'll get a huge amount of traction because even if you get little enclaves where there's a big Muslim population, we shouldn't just assume all Muslims will support them. Um, I mean, recently, and I may make a video about this, there was an Ahmadi man in Pakistan murdered. The Ahmadis are a minority Muslim group. In Britain, Islamists have threatened not just non-Muslims, but Muslim minority groups. So it's a possibility, and it would certainly be a concerning development. But this is why any sort of legislation regarding hate speech and so on that can be construed as a de facto blasphemy law must be absolutely robustly opposed. Um, in this country, we must have the freedom to criticize Islamic extremism because it's a threat. So, do I think that Muslim independence will form into a united party from the next election? Possibly, but I think they'll be quite small. Remember, we already have some factions like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which has had a presence in universities. The thing is, though, they could fall into a trap because on one hand, they reject the West outright. And yet, if they were to take part in the democratic process, they'd be hypocrites and they would be exposed as hypocrites, and they know that. So they may find themselves shooting themselves in the foot. If they form a party, then it's rejected by the public. People will say, look, you've no support. I think it'd be quite minor at this point. Even though there's definitely an Islamist presence in this country, I'm not sure that it's necessarily united. But we absolutely need to oppose it. It's a disgrace that a British teacher is forced into hiding because he's accused of blasphemy. It's an absolute disgrace. I will say too many Muslims are in denial about this problem. And another weasel word that I think is used to shackle this debate is Islamophobia. I I've always condemned anti-Muslim bigotry, so I don't support someone, for example, putting bacon grease on a mosque door. That's just stupid. But um, there is legitimate concerns about Islamic extremism, and people must have the freedom to say so without being able to bigot. He's an evil man. Is he the bloke that said that about children in Sandy Hook? He is, yeah. Although I have to say the parents sued him recently, and he's basically been made bankrupt. Thank good. But he's a despicable character, Alex Jones. I mean, I wonder how much of his own delusions he actually believes. My mate is living in hiding for leaving Islam. They tried to unlive him. I mean, this is the thing. For all the propaganda about it being a religion of peace, it's what happens to people who decide to leave Islam is not it's not comparable to someone who was a Christian and then decides to leave Christianity. It's just not comparable. Islam has a serious problem with tolerance. And the thing is, I knew a Syrian guy, and on a personal level, the guy was all right. I wouldn't say he was an extremist, but he was one of those Muslims who's in denial about the problem. So when a guy was shot in Sweden, the guy that was burning Qurans, his attitude was, "Oh, it's awful, it's awful." But Islam's a religion of peace. You should find the light. He's trying to proselytize. So long as people are murdered in the name of Islam, they cannot say it's a religion of peace. And the point I made to my Syrian acquaintance is, look, you're claiming it's a religion of peace, but that's kind of an Islamic supremacist statement because it's a world's second biggest religion, over 1 billion adherents. Are you honestly saying that among 1 billion people there are no extremists? And in a country like Pakistan, it's the mainstream. It's the extremists who are the mainstream. You did a video, Conor McGregor. I know you don't like him, but he's right that Ireland has problems with mass immigration. The Irish should get a grip on it. Well, the thing is, Ray, he may be right about that, but is he the right messenger? I mean, put it this way, let me draw an analogy with you. A rapist can claim that they're against racism. A racist can say they're against rape. A burglar could say that they're opposed to child pornography. Being right about one thing doesn't make someone a good spokesperson. So that's the point I would make. As for his delusion that he's going to run for president of Ireland, I mean, the guy's a rapist. Um, it may be that Ireland does need to get a grip on its immigration problem. I would recognise that there is a lot of anxiety and frustration in Ireland about that issue. But I would not hold up someone like Conor McGregor to be the spokesperson for that. I mean, there's a lot more. I would argue there's people who are more responsible, better citizens than Conor McGregor who are speaking out on that. So should they not be listened to? The fact that Conor McGregor's famous, I mean, the guy's. I just don't. It's not like I don't like him. I can't stand him. I think he's a horrible person. I see nothing redeeming about him whatsoever. So that's all I would say respectfully to yourself. Just because he happens to be right about immigration doesn't mean he's a good spokesperson. Um, and if Ireland got a criminal as president, and I mean it'll never happen because most Irish reject Conor McGregor, but what would that say? Although if it can happen in America, perhaps it can happen anywhere else. But anyway, respectfully, that's what I would say. But something, there is a bit of hypocrisy with that. Look at the number of Irish who went to America, to the New World, for a better life. Um, so there's a bit of hypocrisy in that position, to rail against immigrants when Ireland, more than many countries, really has an experience of being a diaspora, going to other parts of the world, not just the United States, but Canada, Australia, South America for a better life. But sure, there has to be controls on it. I just don't think Conor McGregor is the right spokesperson for that. Pastor Huckleberry, wonderful. What's wonderful? Well, welcome first of all, but what specifically is wonderful? This is a really important point. Even if Muslims aren't all extremists, the tendency of British Muslims to be hard on Islamophobia and lenient on criticizing extremism means they facilitate it. Absolutely. This is my frustration, and I almost think they're worse. Because with an Islamist, with someone like the Manchester Arena bomber or some fanatic preacher who's calling for the death of infidels, they're straightforward. They're hate mongers, they're extremists, they're dangerous, they're straightforward. What's worse is so called moderate Muslims who are in denial about the problem. They will condemn violence, they will condemn terrorist attacks, but they'll simultaneously say, oh, that's awful, but it's nothing to do with Islam. Now, I think that is a big problem because it's denying Islamic extremism. It's a bit like saying the Crusades had nothing to do with Christianity, which is nonsense. No Christian would deny that. No Christian would say that the Crusades weren't about spreading Christendom violently. Welcome, Thomas. Happy Easter to you too. So yeah, that's my frustration with a lot of British Muslims. They're in denial about the problem. I mean, it's like, understandably, they don't like their faith being having a bad reputation, but they have to be honest about it. There is a problem in their midst. And simply labeling people Islamophobic for talking about this is pathetic. I would be very, very, very wary about any government legislation that makes it illegal to criticize Islam under the guise of, bigotry. We need to differentiate between hating people and hating an ideology. I support people's right to dislike or even hate Islam. I wouldn't support people who advocate violence against Muslims. So during last year's riots, there was some genuine anti-Muslim hostility that was unfair because it wasn't a Muslim who killed the three little girls, and there were Muslims put in danger. Mosques were threatened. That's wrong. Um, but yeah, why is the Islamic world the way it is then? Well, exactly. The Islamic world. I mean, there is not a single Islamic country in this world that doesn't have some level of persecution of minorities. Some are a little bit better than others. Indonesia, Tunisia are not as bad as Pakistan and Iran or Somalia, but persecution of minorities exists in every Islamic country. And there is a mindset. I remember back in 2017, there was a student in Pakistan lynched to death. Mashal Khan, the guy is called. He was an atheist and he spoken out. Well, he was lynched. He was murdered by an Islamist mob. Now, I remember at the time seeing Pakistanis coming and saying, "Oh, that's awful. He should have been executed judicially." So they weren't even condemning the fact he died. They just condemned the fact it was outside the law. They argued he should have been executed for blasphemy rather than lynched. That's the mindset you get in a country like Pakistan. So this is the thing when we see Islamic extremism. It isn't just manifested in the likes of ISIS. It's manifested in attitudes to blasphemy. It's manifested in intolerance towards minorities. Try being a Christian in Pakistan or an atheist in Saudi Arabia. In fact, I know of refugees who are Iranian Christians. That's why I'm somewhat sympathetic to refugees, actually, in that sort of situation. Um, Happy Easter, Nathan. Godspeed. Thank you, Steve. You too. Appreciate that. At Easter time, I always think actually of persecuted Christians because it's underreported. In northern Nigeria, it's often framed as tribal conflict. But what we're seeing is, over the years, thousands of Christians murdered. In Ukraine, Palm Sunday, Putin's forces murdered Ukrainian Christians. I mean, yes, it's often from Islamic extremism, but actually, what Russia's doing is, I mean, in occupied Ukraine, Christian minorities, Protestants, Catholics, and indeed Orthodox Ukrainians are being persecuted by the Russian Orthodox faction. But the persecution of Christians around the world is a very real thing. And I want leaders to be more outspoken on that. The Pope needs to be outspoken on it. Starmer needs to be outspoken on it. This is a reality. Christians are persecuted in this world. And some would argue, Christians do a bit of persecuting themselves. In a country like Uganda, for example, it's dangerous to be gay. But Christians are widely persecuted in the world. That's the reality. Are we seeing an exodus of the wealthier British working class to Dubai? Do you consider this bizarre? Honestly, Alistair, I don't know that much about that. All I can say is last year, when I went to the Philippines, I stopped over in Dubai and there was a family behind me. Whether they were working class or not, I don't know. But the father had obviously got some job there, and his the flight attendants were taking pictures of the family, and he was telling his little girls, "Oh, you're going to make new friends in Dubai." But honestly, I don't know enough about that subject. Personally, I would think carefully about going to Dubai. My impression of it is just one big artificial. It's like a big Arab Las Vegas. It strikes me as a bit shallow, and I mean, there's a lot of things to do there. I guess it has a lot of attractions, but the human rights record's very shady, and they tend to change the rules on the spot. You know, it's I'd be very wary about going to Dubai. Um, the way they treat foreign laborers, I mean, Bangladeshi or Filipino workers is not good at all. So, guys, I'm going to give this about another 10 minutes. I wanted to do a live stream, so it's coming up to, I'll give it to about 10 past 11. I actually want to see WrestleMania, the second part, tonight. Talking of live streams, don't know if any of you guys follow wrestling, but I have been watching it. I watched the fights, the bouts between, I don't usually watch women's wrestling, but I must admit the fight between, let me get this right, Charlotte Flair and I forget her name now, but it was very watchable. Then there was Seth Rollins, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns triple threat match. Yeah, it was. Then the American Shield, I think, the Fox Lucha Libre wrestler. Anyway, how did your girlfriend find the UK? I think she had a good time. I mean, that's my impression. I tried to, make it interesting for her. We done a lot of things. We went to Edinburgh. We went to Durham Cathedral, Hadrian's Wall, Newcastle. Um, we went to Laser Quest here in Sunderland. I brought out for a romantic meal to a local Italian restaurant. So thanks for asking. I think she had a good experience. That would be my impression. I was hoping actually to do a video with her, but we never got round to it, which is a pity. But thanks for asking. I think she had a good experience. I mean, when I was there, I got pretty bad sunburn, so she didn't have that problem. Japan is less homeless. Why is that, do you think? What could Britain do to solve the homeless problem? I'm not sure about that, Ray. I think Japan actually has quite. I mean, the thing about Japan, it's a wealthy country, but there is a real stigma about unemployment and homelessness. I've heard, for example, Japanese businessmen who are made redundant will actually dress up in their business clothes and then go and spend all day under a bridge. So I'm not sure what you're basing that on, but if it's true, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what they would be doing. Certainly, California has a chronic homeless problem. What could Britain do to solve the homeless problem? It's not a simple issue. One thing certainly is that homeless people can't open a bank account without an address. Now, clearly, that's stupid. If they're vulnerably housed or rough sleepers, obviously they're not going to have an address. Some, I think, nationwide and some other building societies have being a bit more flexible in that recently. But homelessness is it's not a black and white problem. It's not simple as giving someone a roof over their heads. Often there's addiction issues. I've actually seen a case where young women would rather sleep rough than be in a shelter where there's men that they don't know. So it's not a black and white issue. I try to help rough sleepers when I can. I'll get them a hot drink. I'll try and do what I can, but it's a complex problem, so there's no quick fix. But certainly, I think Tory austerity didn't help. That's for sure. I respect Prince William's efforts to raise awareness of the issue, but it's not a black and white issue. There's a lot of issues around that. But I'm not sure. Like I didn't know Japan has a lower homeless rate. Maybe it has improved recently. So, what do you think, Ray? What's Japan doing right if that is the case? Have you seen the clips of people going nuts during the Minecraft movie in cinemas, throwing things, screaming EDC? No. I did see a piece in the Times welcoming Minecraft though, because it's getting teenagers back into the cinema. It seems to be making quite a big impact. I wouldn't watch it simply because I'm not familiar with the game, but it does seem to be making a big impact. Well, what is that? Is it just, I mean, is it having some sort of psychological effect on people, or is it just, I don't know, are they just being jackasses, or what is it? Has Chicken Jockey gone too far? Chicken Jockey. Sorry, I don't know what that is. I heard that the Chicken Jockey gang literally ripped up seats in cinemas out of their hinges. So it's a gang. Where was that? I mean, that's pretty awful if that's true. I hope the cinema management got the police, and I hope there was arrests made. That's appalling. That's true. But I mean, is the Minecraft movie violent or what? What's I don't know. I've heard of, for example, movies in the past having a psychological effect on people, people throwing up, and people like when The Exorcist came out famously. But when I was homeless, I couldn't get a job, and it was BS. And when I was put on a no holds hotel, I still couldn't get a job. How could someone move on with their life if they can't work? I'm sorry to hear of that experience, just common sense, but you'll know better than any of us what that's like. The closest I had was one night sleeping rough in London. I was at the Live 8 concert and I missed my last train home and I couldn't get into the hostel that night. It was scary and it was a long night. But you're absolutely right. This is what I've heard from talking to rough sleepers. It's a cycle. So the powers that be need to understand that. The other thing that frustrates me is when councils, for example, put up spikes outside buildings and so on, and punish rough sleepers. Instead of punishing people, they need to provide solutions. Now, aggressive begging is one thing, but punishing people for being poor is appalling. So yeah, you would know better than any of us what that's like. So feel free to share your experience here. Chicken jockey is a line in the Minecraft movie. Okay, when Jack Black says it, and the teenagers are going nuts and yeah, causing damage. Someone bought a real chicken into this. God, it sounds like it's getting out of hand. I'm going to check out some of those videos, maybe if I get a chance. You did a video that a Chinese volunteer suffered racism for Russia. Yeah, literally tonight. I done that about an hour ago. I thought Chinese don't have racist problems. You would. Chinese would not suffer racism by Russian forces. Yeah, but Russia definitely has a pretty serious racist problem. I mean, this is the thing. Ideologically, Russia and China are aligned. But this is not a new thing. I mean, North Koreans who volunteered for Russia have been, mocked by their Russian counterparts. Russia's a big country, and actually, there are Russian citizens who are Asiatic in appearance. Not all Russians are white Europeans. There's a lot of Asiatic Russians. But for all their smearing Ukraine as a Nazi country, Russia's got a very serious neo Nazi problem, and often it's been facilitated by the Kremlin. I mean, more often than not, Putin has, the legal system in Russia will punish these people for hooliganism. This is how it works in Russia. So a gang of skinheads will beat up some Central Asian worker in Moscow or St. Petersburg, and they'll get, comparatively by Russian standards, a relatively lenient sentence. And these are the people that Russia's now putting into its armed forces. Then you get an Asian volunteer like these Chinese guys. Obviously, they're not going to be treated with respect. So yeah, I just hope it's a wake up call. I hope that anyone hoping to join Russia's forces see what it is. But yeah, it doesn't at all surprise me that there's racism in Russia. It's a long-standing problem. For all their attempts to smear Ukraine, I would argue Russia's a much bigger problem with that. I'm not saying Ukraine's immune from it, but Russia definitely has a serious problem with racism. I put that angle into it deliberately because, it's something that Russia's tried to smear Ukraine with. Like I say, I cited the Times report. Never ending, took me 6 months to get into a 2-star hotel. That's disgrace. So, if you don't mind me asking, just common sense, were you vulnerably housed at that time? Were you couch surfing? Were you actually sleeping rough? I mean, I think it's a disgrace that anyone sleeps rough in the world's sixth biggest economy in 2025. That's something I don't think anyone should go through. Exposed to the elements, exposed to abuse. I knew a rough sleeper in Sunderland, and she'd been physically attacked by some yobs. It was horrible. A guy I know has been drinking and partying for a whole week straight. I bring this up because he's big into the idea of hedonism. He's very proud to binge drink. I feel this is extremely detrimental. Well, absolutely it is. Is that guy young? Is he a young guy or? I must admit, in my university days, there was a culture there because universities in the 2000s had a bad habit of these sort of really cheap drink offers. For example, an alcopop for £1. So you go into a student bar, you're basically drinking all night, and it's like an alcopop. And the thing is, it's stronger than people realize. But yeah, it was a lifestyle whereby I was living in the main campus, Wolverhampton University, and you get sucked into these things. So late 20s, approaching 30s. I hope he realizes into his 30s that it's fun at first, it's exciting at first, but that's going to burn his body out. Or he's going to do something stupid and get into legal problems. So I don't know if he's a friend of yours or just an acquaintance, but hopefully you could persuade him that it's not wise. I mean, I'll admit there's an exciting edge to it because, especially at university, if you're a young student, 19, 20 years old, you're away from home for the first time, you're meeting new people, it is exciting. And I've nothing against, fun, merry drinking, but when it starts becoming a habit, that's a serious problem. I sleep outside. I do not stay around people's, but I overstayed my welcome after a couple of months. Then COVID happened. Tried to get universal credit, but they didn't want to know. So this wasn't ancient history. This is only a few years ago. Yeah, I mean, the authorities do not make it easy. So why couldn't you get universal credit? Was it because you didn't have an address? I mean, just common sense. How did you actually eat? How did you have money to even eat? How did that work? Were you relying on, if you don't mind talking about this, were you relying on charity? How did you even manage to eat at that time? I mean, it sounds like an awful experience. Can't stand alcohol, makes me feel sick. Are you allergic to alcohol, Thomas? Or I mean, I'm not. I wouldn't be Puritan on it. I'm not against alcohol, but anything in excess isn't good. Geez, dude, that camera's 240. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Well, Moonshine, welcome, first of all. Secondly, I've been doing this live stream for an hour and you're the first person to complain. So it's not perfect, but everyone else can make out what I'm saying. So I'm working with what I've got. I've got a stream laptop. I'm working with what I've got. And I don't have the financial means to get a better one. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry if I seem touchy. It's just I have had experience of people trolling my channel with stuff like that, and it's just irritating. So yeah. Howdy, Paul. Welcome. Ray, do you think we should stop buying products from China and stop the UK buying? And should the UK buy stuff from Japan? Because Japan has good quality stuff in China. Well, certainly I wouldn't advocate buying anything from China. I got a little memory card when I was over there. It was rubbish. Um, I had about 1,000 photos in that, and around I'd say 600 or 700 of them were corrupted. It was very annoying. Um, in terms of totally stopping buying Chinese products, it would be very difficult because so much is made in China. And if we look at a laptop today, it's got components from all over the world, so it would be basically impossible to totally boycott it. One thing I am adamant about, though, is this country should be far less reliant on China. And this Labour government is far too, we've allowed China to buy up too much of our infrastructure. The Times actually had a report on that. I've put it on my pile now, but yeah, for sure. Japan, I absolutely favour good trade with Japan because Japanese products would certainly be a lot better. But yeah, I absolutely advocate getting away from reliance on China for sure. I didn't a lot of the time and just had to go to a food bank after shops opened up, got some cash in hand work. It sounds like a really, really rough time, and I imagine that must have had an impact on your mental health because obviously, if you're just surviving, you can't do things that we take for granted. You can't go to the cinema, you can't. It must have been a hell of a time, and a huge sympathy for that. I mean, it's something that scares me, to be honest, being in that situation. If you don't mind me asking, what about family members? Did you have anyone in your family that could help out? Yeah, thank you, Moonshine. I'm okay. Not too bad. The world is a stage. I love jade. It's mainly mined in Myanmar, but it's carved in China. Yeah. I thought I got a little jade thing once, but it turned out to be plastic. The jade industry, though, is quite controversial. There's a lot of mining disasters in Burma with jade. We need our leaders to stand up to China. Absolutely. And right now, this Labour government, I mean, the Tories were never great either, but Labour is going even further. I kind of have this mixed view on Labour. On one hand, they've got it right regarding Russia. Yet when it comes to China, they're pandering to China. It's really not good. This left right dialectic is by design. Interesting. I'm good, got my own place and got a good job. That's good to hear. How do you think NK soldiers in Russia will see NK when they return home? That's an interesting question. I mean, it's like coming from one hellhole dictatorship to another. In terms of Russia, I don't think they'll see it much differently because Russia's only very, very moderately more free than North Korea. Ukraine, I mean, one thing I'm thinking about with these North Korean and Chinese troops and even some of the Russians, when they realize that the Ukrainians treat them in a civil way, they'll realize the lies they've been told. I mean, it may be, I'm just pondering this idea, but it may be some of these so called North Korean volunteers are actually looking at it as a way to get the hell out of North Korea, maybe hoping they'll be captured by the Ukrainians. That'd be interesting. Moonshine, what do you mean both left and right are controlled? What do you mean by that? Just so you know, guys, and we'll wrap this up in about 5 minutes. I think it's been a good live stream. We've had a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of participation, which I always like. You know, often people leave comments, I'm not able to get back to them. So, but yeah, Moonshine, I'm just wondering what you mean by they're both controlled. I don't know, mum's side of the family after I got my life on track. I made contact and know them all. My dad made me homeless. God, sorry to hear that. And if you want to talk about that, you're welcome, but I know it's a very personal thing. Oh, thanks, Thomas. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. I mean, I do this just to keep engaged with subscribers. I try to do it about once a month. It's not always possible. The establishment aren't left or right wing, both pull the same way. They want people arguing over politics. But don't you think in a democracy, politics affects all of us, so we're going to be debating it anyway? I mean, if you take an issue like crime, people are going to have different views on that. I'm not sure that's necessarily the establishment dividing us. I think that if you get two people and you say, look, this is the issue healthcare, crime, transport, people are going to have different ideas anyway, don't you think? And your video is genuinely my favorite YouTuber. That's I really appreciate that, Thomas. It's great to hear. I, you know, that is very good to hear because sometimes I honestly think, am I too negative? Do I make too many cynical videos? But I just try to raise things that are topical, raise things that I think are important. So I really appreciate you saying that. It really is. It's good to get that sort of feedback. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Politics are entertainment for the slave classes. Plato. Yeah, but Plato was speaking in ancient Greece. I mean, in a free society, there's going to be adversarial debate. That's just part of, unless, I mean, you don't seriously think everyone's going to agree on every issue and shine, because I don't think that's the establishment. I mean, certainly I have plenty of criticisms of the establishment, but I think differences of opinion is part of human nature. Don't you think so? I will leave it there, but I do a lot of work at the food bank I used to go to, but life has changed my life around. Well, I'm pleased things are much better for you. I just hope that it can also improve for others in this situation. It's a great system for the parasites, the apex of this system. Okay. But again, Moonshine, don't you think that human beings are going to have differences of opinion anyway? No, that's okay. I mean, the whole point of these live streams is get different topics going, and you've certainly raised an interesting one. I am going to wrap this up soon, though. So, what's your thoughts on my question there? Don't you think people are going to have differences of opinion anyway? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, with or without, even if we have an anarchistic society where there's no institutions, you're going to have differences of opinion, I think. Because people have different life experiences and they have different ways of seeing things. That's just something that we get in society. That doesn't change the fact the system is corrupt from the top down. Um, I think this corruption, whether it's endemic corruption, I don't know. I mean, I have often been very vocal about our justice system and double standards in it, but I wouldn't go so far as to say the whole thing is corrupt. Every institution is corrupt because that's too dystopian. It's too negative. I don't think it's that bad. Um, but I agree there's corruption. I agree that where there is power, there is corruption for sure. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap this up soon because of other things to do. I want to go to the WrestleMania live stream, and I may actually make a video on that trans issue because it's a big one at the moment. I saw a report earlier. Maybe I should have discussed it in this actually, but I saw a report about actually there was trans activists campaigning in London, but one of them had a sign saying "Hang all turfs," and then the same person, a woman from the women's group said they were willing to talk to them. Yet the trans activist said, "Oh, I don't know if we can even talk to them." So that says a lot. So what's your view on how the Labour government is doing so far? Honestly, just common sense is mixed. On the negative side, they're far too close to China. I do not like. I really don't like their trajectory on welfare. I don't like the way that essentially disabled claimants are being punished. I think Liz Kendall and Rachel Reeves are living in a bubble. The fact that they think they know more than doctors, and I think they're out Torying the Tories when it comes to scapegoating claimants. So I'm very unhappy about that, and I don't like Labour's pandering to China. Crime and justice, honestly, I think that transcends party politics. I can say I'm not happy with it, but then I wasn't happy under the Tories either. On the more positive side, I think that Starmer's been strong on Ukraine. Starmer and Lamy have been very vocal on that, and that's a good thing. And I actually do welcome another positive thing is the reset with Europe. It can only be a good thing. I know Brexiteers will have this attitude that any sort of work with France or Germany is betraying Brexit. I don't agree with that. I think it makes all the sense in the world for us to be working with our closest neighbours, and I absolutely support it. It doesn't mean we're betraying Brexit. It doesn't mean rejoining the EU. So in that sense, I agree with Labour. I think Starmer's a little bit less woke in office than he was in opposition. So that has to be a good thing. He's been less keen to kind of pander to certain movements. But so far, ranking Labour out of 10, 5 out of 10. I can't give it higher, but I wouldn't say it's been awful. And the other thing about getting into power is the Tories are in power for 14 years. It will take time for Labour to deal with some issues. Okay, let's see. Frankfurt School has nothing to do with modern day problems. Get real. I guess that's a response to another comment. Um, okay, guys, it's good that we've got a debate going here, but I'm losing track a little bit. Bear with me a second. Let's see. Because I think I missed something. Okay, read about the Tavistock Inns, the Frankfurt School. Sorry, I'm missing. There is a 20-second lapse on this, but read about the Tavistock Inns, the Frankfurt School. Are you talking about the Tavistock regarding the trans issue? The Club of Rome. So, what's your view on how the Labour government does Frankfurt Schools and the Fabian Society? Alistair Burns influences here now. Theodore O'Donnell championed Western canon. He should not be blamed for wokeism. These have molded society through social engineering. Why is Labour switching the ESA to universal credit? Labour seems to be making people to work. I thought they were different from the Tories. I mean, what Labour needs to understand, what Liz Kendall and Rachel Reeves need to understand, is someone like my sister who has fibromyalgia. It's a debilitating, painful condition. You cannot be expected to do a 9 to 5 job. It's nonsense. And the way the DWP treats people, I mean, they told my sister to go to an interview that was 50 minutes away. It's exhausting for her to get on public transport. I think Liz Kendall is just trying to please right wing tabloids. Now, if she was a Tory, I'd expect it. But being Labour, the fact that they're even talking about pressuring airlines to hand over information, they're out Torying the Tories. I just think it's disgraceful for Liz Kendall to come out with these sweeping statements like thousands of people are capable of working when she doesn't know, and she presents it as trying to help people. But all that is doing is creating great anxiety. I petitioned my MP on this, incidentally, Lewis Atkinson, on this issue um, via the Trussell Trust, and he just said it's in the parliamentary stages. It will take time before implementation. He gave a politician's answer, to be honest, but yeah, it's something I don't like about Labour at the moment, and it's really they don't understand or they don't care about the anxiety that they're causing disabled claimants. These are molded. Okay, let's see here. Wow, the trans activists can be so toxic. I totally agree, Thomas. Absolutely. Where did the climate change man-made come from? Okay, that's a whole other issue. Um, let's see. I mean, it's good to get different topics, but we've got a lot going on here. Let's see. Do you go and protest? I started to go to the Turning Point UK protests. I think protests could be a good way to push debate and make change. Occasionally, I've been on protests, yeah, but I always think with protests, you have to be careful not to polarize the public. As we know, Just Stop Oil was an absolute failure because they infuriated the public with their antics. So I think that protest can be a powerful thing, and it's a democratic right, but it has to be careful not to polarize the public. Also, in a democracy, it's misguided to think that just because there's vocal protesters, they are the majority opinion when it might be the opposite. Let's see. Hey, dude, tell your sister to read in the natural help the medication they give for what she has will never get rid. And I think she's done some of that as well. I think she's used some kind of herbal type things, and it does help her to an extent. But with her, it's not just fibromyalgia. She has depression. She's got all sorts of issues. So she has tried that as well, but it's complex health problems that she's got. Okay, I'll bring this up to 120 then wrap up this live stream. Let's say 3 more minutes, guys. So any other questions or any other points? Yeah, Thomas, I agree. They can be very toxic. I mean, for people who claim to be victims, they're pretty good at victimizing others, particularly women who see things differently from them. Both have the same in who gives them the most. Okay. It's good to get these philosophical debates going, but we won't quite have time to go into everything. Alex Young, glad that I made it into the live stream. Welcome back. I haven't seen your comment for a while, so I guess you've been watching, but welcome. Thanks for coming in. How are they not controlled? LOL. Any of you guys into wrestling, or any of you watching WrestleMania? Just out of interest. Totally understand if you're not. But is anyone watching? I started doing YouTube last year. I only have 2,000 subscribers. That's about the same as myself. I have around 2,500, so we're on a similar level. What would you say is a good way to push yourself to keep making videos as you've been doing it for 13 years? Well, like I say, just common sense. My channel's not huge because I have no special sort of features or anything. If I had the financial means, if I had the technology, I'd probably put a lot more into this. Why do I keep doing it? Because honestly, my average video will get maybe 50 views, which is better than nothing, but it's not outstanding. But sometimes I've had videos that have got thousands of views, and there's no particular reason for that. There's nothing to say this video will get more views than this one. It's pot luck, honestly. My top video has 33,000 views. It was about a human rights issue, but there's nothing to suggest that would be the case. How do I keep doing it? Well, I'm opinionated. The things I talk about, I care about. So, in a way, it's kind of selfish. I just want to raise these issues for myself as much as anything. So how do I keep pushing myself to do it? As long as I have a volume on my computer, as long as I could do this, and as long as we have free speech in this country, I will do it. So that's what I would say. But I've about 2,500 subscribers, so we're on a similar level. Um, I mean, really, 13 years, I probably should be at a much higher level than this, but I've got other distractions. But I don't regret it for a second. It's all worthwhile. But that's a good question. I may make a video sort of analyzing where I am with this. Me and Thomas used to have a roommate called me and Thomas. You guys know each other personally? That's interesting. Called Oil, who just never cleaned his room, so we called it just Stop Oily. Do you think Reform will win the next general election? No, I don't. I think their success is overrated. I mean, I just don't see them going from 5 or 6 MPs to winning a general election. I think they might do well, but they've got a lot of infighting right now. I don't think they're going to win the general election. And the bottom line is, people can say, look, they came close in all these seats, but that's the point. Labour still beat them in those seats. So something was stopping people from, getting them over the line. Not since Seth Rollins betrayed the Shield. Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting story arc. If it could remove 50 people, mind, it's a lot. Only MMA. I don't really follow MMA. I'm more a boxing guy, and even that I don't follow religiously. I mean, the Ben Eubank feud's a bit toxic at the moment. I think they're taking it too far. Um, Absolutely, but I don't trust them either. But can't be worse. Watch the occasional boxing, but MMA is my go-to combat sport to watch. Admittedly, I know very little about MMA. I don't follow it. Maybe one day I will. Who knows? Um, Maybe in the next live stream we could do future video discussions on a variety of today's topics. Absolutely. I mean, I what I do, Alex Young, I don't really say, okay, this live stream we're going to be talking about this specifically, because I want to be flexible. I want subscribers to feel free to talk about anything, but certainly I always invite people to bring up topical issues. It's a good channel, mate. Keep the good work up. Thanks a lot. Yes, I know, Steve. I introduced him to your channel. That's interesting. I think it's the first time I've come across 2 subscribers who personally know each other, but that's good to hear. You're right, there's some infighting going on. Okay, with that, guys, I'm going to wrap this up because it's been a good live stream, but I do want to go to the WrestleMania soon, and I'm getting a bit peckish actually. I want to get something to eat. I need to do washing up, and I need to stretch. I've been sitting in the seat for a while. Okay, everyone, thanks a lot for your participation. Have a good evening. Have a good tomorrow. Stay safe. Keep positive, and thanks a lot for all your support and participation. I appreciate it. Take care, guys. Have a good day. Have a good evening, and see you in the next live stream.